Alright, now that I got my thumbnail, most public speaking advice is a little lame, but I made it my own stuff and it brought me to fame. But now that I'm here, I'm not just gonna stay in my lane. I'm gonna give you the source and we'll all be insane. Alrighty, so adding an emotional dimension to your speech is essentially what we want to recreate, what we want to do and copy and do every single time because it really is that overpowered. If this was a video game, that would be a cheat code. And I've used this to help me speak in front of 2,000 people. I've used it to help me win public speaking competitions, and I've used it to help me receive standing ovations time and time again. And it works like a charm. And my laptop is on 18%. And so we have to make this video quite quick. And there's a lot to go through. So let's begin. So most public speaking advice is simply just, here's this phrase to say to make you sound like a leader. Here's how to overcome your fear. Here's these cool little hacks and add this phrase and here's this exercise to remove filler words and blah, blah, blah. And you get the idea because I make those kind of videos as well. But it's everywhere, right? And you've heard it and you've watched it and you've consumed it and it's cool. But these are all good steps in the right direction. But if we're talking most bang for your buck, if we're talking, we want to, if this was cricket, we want a six or a strike or what's the word, a home run. That's not going to get you a home run, bucko. The most make or break factor here is an emotional dimension. That is what will elevate your speech to, a new reality, bro. So the first dimension is essentially your words, what you're saying. 2D would be your body language and your gestures with your hands and how confident you look, is your chest upright, etc. But this third dimension is this emotion which pierces through your audience, goes right through their heart like a Cupid's arrow and establishes this connection. That is 3D. 3D speaking. And by the end of this, hopefully you'll be a 3D speaker. So this is essentially what moves people, what makes them cry, what makes them remember your speech. All right, this is the magical component to it all. So why we want it? We found that, we don't necessarily remember names all too well or faces all too well, but we do remember how people made us feel. That holds weight. That emotion, that energy in motion, that is powerful. And if you can just give your audience a bit of emotion, that immediately sets you apart from everyone else. And emotion, energy in motion is the most powerful thing throughout history ever. Tell me I'm wrong. It has, Genghis Khan used heartbreak and anger. Shakespeare used love. Van Gogh used loneliness. And what did they do? They revolutionized history. Van Gogh made beautiful artwork. Shakespeare made beautiful poetry. Hatred fueled revolutions. Genghis Khan had a whole empire. He essentially ruled, half the world at a time. Emotion drives people, armies, revolutions, history. And in the context of our speaking, our speech, our story, it's no different. If we can add an emotional dimension to our speech, we get buy-in. People listen, people remember it, people love it, they laugh, they cry. We move people. We pierce through their heart with our words, and that is powerful. So how do we create this emotional dimension? In the context, I have to explain here. It just says tampon speech. So I had a speech where there was a Women's Month last year. We were having a donation drive, and so I had to speak in front of 1,500 people, 1,800 people, saying, hey guys, we're going to have this donation drive. We want you to donate tampons and sanitary pads for underprivileged women who otherwise wouldn't have been able to receive these products. You can donate, you can give the products directly, you can donate cash, etc. You can pay online, whatever, etc. You get the idea. But instead of just giving a little announcement like that, I used a speech, more so a story. And in the beginning of the story, I was saying, here's this time where I was chubby and, I was made fun of, but I was able to run away and cower and hide. Here's this other time where I was facing some challenge, but I was able to run away and cower and hide. But every day, there's these people that don't just have this privilege like I had, where I could just run away and cower and hide when things got tough. And these people that face this challenge every day are women. And that's how I introduced the drive. But it was all through a personal story. And then I had a competition winning speech about my big brother. And so in this competition, it was a big one in my city, Pretoria, from South Africa, bro. Now I'm in Cape Town, rad, gnarly. Um, Everyone has the same topic. Greatness comes with great responsibility, by Winston Churchill. In order for me to set myself apart, I need a personal aspect to it. And I created that with a story, and I added emotion to it, and it was amazing, and I won. But the way I did this was, while I was writing the speech and the story in particular, I remember crying quite a bit. I was unraveling little micro traumas, little challenges throughout growing up. And I remember this thing, and I remember that, and I added this fact, and it made me cry. And, thinking about the moment and the time we had to say goodbye, it made me cry. And so I feel an emotion in myself, and I dive deeper. And it's challenging for me, and it's uncomfortable for me, but I know it's what the speech needs. And so by me, when I'm writing in the creating process, if I can pour so much emotion over myself from within into the speech, I know for a fact when I deliver it in a similar manner to, the way it happened, but the way I would just speak naturally, the audience will be moved through that emotion. That emotion will spill over into my audience. All right. And that's what it looked. It was messy, but it was real. And for my I was valedictorian. I had to say a speech of valediction. I cried while speaking at the end of it. All right. So these emotions are real. And sometimes, I thought I'd prepared well. I said the speech to myself a bunch of times, and I didn't cry. But when I was there in the moment, I had a little something in my eye. And that was real. And people could feel that, they could see it, and they remembered it. And by the end of the speech, everyone stood up and they gave me a round of applause. They said, wow, bravo. That is real emotion. That is what we want here. And when people see that, they feel it, they are moved. So what we want to take away from that is write stories, practice telling stories, and above all, just get better at sharing stories, because stories are really powerful here. I add stories to everything that I do. Hey, we're going to go and introduce ourselves in the room, guys. I tell a story. Interview, story. Presentation, story. Tell us a little bit about yourself, story. Stories are everywhere. I've shared a few stories in this YouTube video so far. It is everywhere. It is powerful. And I've seen the effects of it. And I know that it works. And that's why I use it in every single, piece of public speaking that I do, because they work really well. So I've read the book Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. I've made my own storytelling notes, a little cheat sheet. If you want that, check the link in the description. It's free. There's a Calendly link, but just book it. And then just tell me, yo, I don't really want to talk to you, bro. And I'll just send you the notes via email. That's all good. This is something I've put effort into, to understand, to learn, to practice, to get better at, to really hone my skill here, because it is so powerful. All right, and I recommend you do the same. And I've used it. It's helped me win in competition. It's transformed me. All right, so please do that. So in order to get good at writing stories, there's a few little principles here. So stories don't have to be extreme or extravagant, like Tom Cruise jumping off the Burj Khalifa. The ordinary stories are ultimately what we want here, because they're relatable. They're on more or less the same level as the audience we're talking to. They're easy to connect with, and that's what we want. If we can connect to the audience, that's ultimately what we need here. And with our stories, it's very important that we make them laugh before we make them cry. All right? Because it's almost like being in the sauna, warm, and then opening up the pores in the skin, and then boom, immediately switching into cold plunge, contracting the pores. It's cold, it's challenging, it's deep. Does that make sense? So if we can make them laugh, it's warm, everyone's giggling, it's amazing, you're charming, you're charismatic, we're opening up the pores, we're connecting, and then as soon as everyone least expects it, in that moment I realized it wasn't about letting go of my big brother. It was about never getting the chance to say goodbye. And now that my big brother is no longer with us, he's very much alive, we just continue to live far apart, I realized that great responsibility doesn't come with greatness, but rather greatness comes with great responsibility. So that is the end of the story I delivered. It was deep, it was sad, but before that, there was like 4 minutes of just straight up laughs and giggles, and it was charming, it was warm, it was amazing. And by contrasting that, it's like a jab, left, jab, 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 boom, uppercut, deep cry. That's what you want. And at the end of it, you want to say, in that moment, I realized. There's always a deep realization at the end of it. That's what gives it substance. That's what moves you. And like the Luca at the beginning of the story can never be the same as the Luca at the end. You have to be transformed somewhat, whether it's physical, from fat to fit, whether it's mental, from stupid to smart, or whether it is more sentimental. In that moment, I realized it wasn't about letting go. It was about never getting the chance to say goodbye. That's an ordinary story where I'm saying goodbye to my brother who's going to study overseas. People have said go to loved ones before. They've let go. They say goodbye to people they love before. That's relatable. Does that make sense? That's what you want here. You make them laugh and you make them cry, and then you say, in that moment, I realized at the end of it, there has to be some transformation. And then this is my quote, Luca Bazooka. The ordinary stories you and I are sharing are relatable, and that's what makes them so easy to connect to the audience, making that emotion we have in our story that much more palatable for our audience. So essentially, add a third dimension, which is emotion. It's the element that leaves a lasting impact. If you can get better at storytelling, use the cheat sheet in the link in the description if you want for help. But if not, just hone this skill, get good at it, and add emotional depth to your speeches, to your stories, to you as a character. You will move people. And in a nutshell, just add a story, lol. So that's been the video. I hope you guys have got some value from it, and let me know if you want any help implementing any of these things. If not, hope to see you in the next one.